Hi there, welcome back to my channel. My name is Danny Henderson, and this week I bring you again the beautiful, the one and only Rachel Vaughan. Hello, Rachel.
Hello, beautiful. So good to be back here. I need an injection of humor and your beautiful energy. So I'm looking forward to this.
Oh, Rachel, you're a blessing. For those of you that haven't met the lovely Rachel before, I want to give you an extremely graphic warning of the highest imaginable level, and then go again to a level that you could never imagine how humans treat our little ones, because everything that you can think of and can't think of pretty much has happened to this beautiful lady, and how she's even physically in her body and alive today and mentally sane is beyond the understanding of any miracle ever performed on a being. But it's testament to the strength and the power and the love that this lady found for herself, was able to grow through. And then because she loves humanity so much, because she stood and named against witnesses, even though she came from a high satanic elite family, it stands and shows testament to this lady. But we're going to get straight to your historical announcement, Lady Rachel Vaughan. Please, the floor is yours.
Okay, so I've been waiting to share this. So interestingly, the letter that was sent on the 1st of May, which is Beltane, and that is the highest sacrificial date of the year. And I have a lay love down project. I teach people about ley lines specifically so that we can get out into the lays and change the frequency from all the sick satanic creatures that do their sacrifices in those ley line crossings. So for this letter to have been written on Beltane, the 1st of May, is rather amazing. So I have been whistleblowing for the last 18 years about the sexual abuse, the ritual abuse, the medical experimentation that I suffered as a child. I was sex trafficked through tunnels. I've proven through extensive research, and people all over the world help me with this, that the tunnels exist in Edwardstown, Glandore and surrounds in Adelaide, South Australia. And the tunnel system in Adelaide is extensive. It's not just in those few suburbs. I started whistleblowing about this in 2006. There's been recent amazing things that have happened where my brother Andrew McIntyre, who had my father's very close friend, Anthony Munro, incarcerated for the abuses he perpetrated against Andrew. Anthony Munro is also a person of interest in the disappearance of the 3 Beaumont children, one of Australia's most famous cases. They disappeared in 1966. My father and Anthony Munro are the two greatest suspects, because they were involved of that disappearance and murder of those 3 children. So a detective told my brother Andrew recently that the major crime department in Adelaide knows that our father, Alan Maxwell McIntyre, was involved in the disappearance and murder of that famous case, those 3 children. And they were 9, 7 and 4 when this occurred. Now, 5 years ago, 2019, I put in an application for a victim of crime payment with the Attorney General, the Crown Solicitor of my state in South Australia. With all of the evidence that we've put out, and I was pushed to psychically, and my soul was pushed to put out all of the evidence, photographic evidence, in video blogs and PDF form at the end of an early part of 2022 and 2023. So I put those out on my Rumble and BitChute channels. I also did a 27-minute presentation, which basically condensed all of that evidence for Jeanette Archer's SRA conference in July of last year. So now I've actually been offered this victim of crime payment. It's not a lot of money. It never is in this sort of circumstance, because my father's actually deceased. So this is without a conviction. So these payouts aren't large. So I am not affluent. It's not about the money. I have finally been validated for the abuse that my father perpetrated against me. And much of what was in my psychiatric assessment for that payment describes, it names abusers, many abusers. It names the tunnels. It names the medical experimentation. I've been validated on all of those things. Now, they couldn't not give me an offer. And again, I remind you, 1st of May, I made this offer on the 1st of May, which is just another validation to me that what I'm doing with the Lay Love Down project and teaching people about ley lines is a very important thing. And that's, I think, more important than me even telling my story about my childhood. It's not more important than being a voice for the countless children that my father was involved in destroying, processing, all the rest of it. But it is a very important fact of what I'm doing in my life. And the fact that that was offered on that date is just astonishing and a major validation. So again, it wasn't a lot of money, but this is the validation that I've been waiting for. It took 5 years. I produced medical reports showing that I had injuries to my vulva, injuries to my rectal passage, psychiatric injuries. I have severe PTSD that's been diagnosed by 2 separate psychiatrists. Basically, I guess they didn't have a choice. They had to eventually do something to try and claw back some integrity, perhaps. So they've offered me this compensation. This now flies in the face of all the trolls that have been attacking me and attacking my 2 siblings as well. My brother Andrew McIntyre is already a victim of crime. He's a valid victim of crime because of what Anthony Munro did to him, and he had Munro put away for 10 years, which is pretty impressive for, and another gentleman was involved as well who was also abused as a child. He doesn't like to be named, but I always want to recognise his bravery because he also stood up after he was abused by Munro as a child. So, you know, we're now 2 victims of crime, validated by the government, and the trolls is quite hilarious. So it's funny, for the last, well, they've been trolling me with a particular Facebook page for 5 years. It uses my name, it uses a picture of me. A lot of people who have liked the page thought it was my page because they've very cunningly set it up. Now, I've been trying to have that pulled down for 5 years, or from when it started. They know the game is up because now you try and click on the link, it just keeps going up to this page is unavailable. But what's actually quite hilarious about it is, and I will be going after them for defamation. I now have, you know, validation from the government. I can do them for defamation. So the most salacious aspect of each post is in the first couple of sentences, and that's what's coming up on the links on any search engine. So it comes up with the name of the troll page and then the worst defamatory statements. But then when you click on the link, you can't find it. It says the page is unavailable. Well, that cache is not going to be cleared out for another couple of years. So it's all sitting there. All the evidence is still there. It doesn't matter how much they try and take it down. It just makes me laugh, Danny, because I'm actually really glad that it's still there now, because that's another validation, because my abusers would go on there and comment regularly. And one of them was my MK Ultra programmer and handler. She's an idiot. She's just so stupid. So again, I wanted to share this in the right forum. So thank you for allowing me to do that. Obviously, I'm very happy. And I knew this day would come, but it's been a long road. 18 years is a long time to have to speak about these things, to be pushed back by, you know, almost every police officer, countless parliamentarians, people in positions of power, you know, police ministers, just being pushed back. Finally, I've had this validation. So this has incredible ramifications for my family members who have not spoken out yet because they've been too afraid, because of the trolling, because of the fear of, danger of speaking out. Now they can also speak up about their abuse and possibly get some sort of remuneration or, compensation for what they've been through. So I expect there will be a bit of a flood now, because there's many people in my family who struggle financially because of their abuse, because of their trauma, haven't been able to speak out, and now they can. And of course, there's going to be serious ramifications for those who protected him in my family and elsewhere in the government.
It's just incredible. It's such a watershed, a real kind of tsunami, because again, it took one little girl. I mean, you say that you've been pushing to be heard for 18 years, but it's actually over 40 years. You've been since birth going through,
and
right?
I'm 50.
Right.
Yeah.
So 50 years of this atrocious behavior, and then also witnessing your siblings, other little ones. You've watched the unaliving of little ones and people. And again, it's just incredible. The strength in you, whatever it is that your soul came in with, that power to keep you going, to survive, to be a voice that spoke out. And as we mentioned before we hit record, when we look at the filth in the rap, the weaponized gangster rap hip hop industry, which is multi-gazillions, that's coming down. They're using the fall of P. Diddy, Puff Diddy, whatever name he calls himself now. I think he's like the latest thing that Muppet was calling himself was Dr. Love or something. He's a really vicious, aggressive, violent, and obviously we've seen videos, those who've been paying attention. So we're watching that government system come down globally, in Australia, particularly as we're looking at with you. We're looking at the music industry and all of the systems there. And it's just so wonderful for all victims and all people that felt and feel so desperate that no one's going to hear, nothing's going to be done. But now they're witnessing. And even if they as an individual don't get named or don't get acknowledged or don't get compensated, their soul will be compensated on a level. It might be very small. And then for the trolls, again, the trolling that's happened since I've come out on various different things in truth and disclosure has been horrific. Murder, accusing of murder and terrible things and awful. And it gives me delight. I'm already in various defamation cases. I've called them, the two men in particular, let them know what's coming, just so they're prepared, because it's coming. And it's just so great because all their videos are out there. All the videos they've made are still there. So they can't just take them down, or they can try. Maybe they'll try, who knows? But the fact that the Australian government, Rachel Vaughan, has been forced to acknowledge you, Rachel Vaughan, your siblings, your family, and the we can't say that word, papoose, the atrocities against you, let's put it that way. It is huge. It is huge. And you forcing a literal government in Australia, of Australia, to acknowledge, it's just like, goodness me. Now we'll see, as in the P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, as soon as he made a payout to his, former girlfriend, look what happened. Look what happened. And now the Australian government making a payout to you now. Look what's happening. And so people, don't give up hope. Please do not give up hope. Now, let's go into, we're going to go into the lovely comments. There were so many beautiful comments. Not surprisingly, I'm so lucky, honestly. My beautiful channel, as I call it, the people that come and join and hang out, even though silent, I see you, I feel you, I hear you quietly. The ones that jump in the live chat with us, the ones that find friends with each other, they really make this channel what it is, as you know, and a lot of them have had similar experiences to things you've gone through as well. And so we want to acknowledge them and answer some of their questions, but also I do think it's really important when you talk about your project, the ley line project, which is the ley line is the neural pathways on the planet, the electrical points, the electrical pathways that hold this energetic sphere. Is she not flat? Don't get me started on that. So, with the ley lines rolled down, the crossover points, some call them the Mary and Michael lines and whatever. So let's go into you acknowledging that there's been sacrifices, trauma, hurt, harm, buildings and things built on top of these crossover points. What can people do to help heal the land? Because that's what's happening en masse on our planet. What can they do?
So what we need to do is take back those spaces and reverse the abuse of the planet and all of the animals and children and people who've been sacrificed in there. So part of that is psychopumping, and only people who are well versed in that sort of activity need to be able to do that. So those are people that are like souls that are in human incarnation who have the ability to release captured or lost souls. So when you totally traumatize a soul through a sacrificial process, they often don't know how to move forward. They don't know how to move into the proper dimension that they belong in. So that's something that needs to be done. But on a normal layperson's level, what we need to do is push in lovingly with our intent, the intent for freedom, prosperity, for humanity. So one way of doing that, because it's a frequency channel, ley lines are like tunnels of energy that run across the earth. If we go into a ley line, because they all connect, we can actually put in our intent, our frequency for freedom, prosperity, for joy, for all humanity. That's the absolute opposite, and love. That's the opposite of what the Satanists put into there when they do their torturous rituals. But there are so many more of us than there are of these dark souls doing this sort of behavior. What we're doing is we're retuning the planet. It's a bit like tuning a guitar. We're putting in a positive frequency, a loving intent. Our intent is our most powerful tool. So if we go in with that intent, we can clear the lines of all this dark energy that has been, poured in. It's so obvious to me that the dark has lost this fight and this war. I think I might have mentioned, or no, I probably didn't. So Rory Duff, amazing geobiologist, has spoken about how the ley lines, normally that they would harmonize for short periods of time, every solstice and every equinox. So we're talking 21st of June, 21st September, 21st December, 21st of March. They used to resonate or synchronize, harmonize is the word he uses, for short periods, hours or days. Then it became to about 45 days of the year, the harmonizations would occur. So that 4 times that comes up to 180 days. Then the harmonizations apparently are about to go to permanent harmony by December of this year. That, for me, as a psychic, tells me we're going into the 5th dimension. So we are about to exit the 3rd dimension where all of these horrible things can occur and move into a higher frequency. There may still be some dark elements, but they will be squashed. They will not have the power that they've had. We've literally won. This is why we've had this huge push for this, trying to take the power, trying to hook us all up to some AI system, jab us all. It's all part of that process. I hope it's all right to use that JAB word. They've lost. They've 100% lost. And you can see by the absolute panic of governments across the world now that they realise that they've gone too fast, too hard, and they're now looking at mass MURDR.
Yeah. No, that's so true. I saw that little rat man, Fauci, or Dr. Wauci, being asked directly by that blonde lady, MG something. Good for her. Asking the little rat, where did you get your information, and questioning his science. And so people now, the illusion, the curtain is down. Like, you don't give power to one man or one woman. Hello, when are we going to learn that lesson? You don't give power to a single person, a pope, a shirt-lifting, raping cardinal. Jesus, but that's the thing. So we're going from 3rd, we're in 4th, and we're moving into 5th, and we're seeing 5th, and that's it. Now, a couple of things. Psychopumping, we need to explain that to people. Before we do, we must also, I'm going to go first and then you, please. Of all my years as a clairvoyant medium, working on so many different people, witnessing women, in particular women, love you all, who say that they're psychic, desperately needing to be the one that healed the land, opened the Stargate men. I opened the Stargate men because of my meditation group. We saved the world. No, mate, on that date, for thousands of years, thousands of people around the planet focus on the same area, which is part of the energetic frequency you're talking about. It's not one person. Beware of people who claim that nonsense. They're not the leaders. Stop. So now, the psychic women in particular, who go out into places, into buildings, onto land, etc., and then say to a dark spirit, dark entity, dark frequency, damaged land, band of souls just waiting to come in, okay, whether they're earthbound, whether they're demonic, whether they're on a principality, a demonic principality, you can use my body, use me, come into me. Listen, you silly old bag. If you want to die and get sick and stay sick and die a horrible death, go ahead and do that. We've got to stop these silly people, and they are women in particular, who just want to be in the fray. Yes, we didn't come here to sacrifice ourselves, okay? Newsflash. Okay, and I'm not being aggressive, I'm being assertive because I've seen it. I'm sure you have too, so many times. Stop using your vessels as sacrificial machines. Nobody cares, and you'll die a horrible, painful death. Now, let's go to psychopumping. Would you please explain in layman's terms, darling, what is psychopumping?
Okay, so this is a term that a friend of mine, Fergus Greenwood O'Connor, taught me recently. Apparently, it's a person who goes in and releases lost souls. So a lot of souls get lost, like I said, if they go through massive trauma before death. It doesn't necessarily have to be the SRA type trauma, but it can be any kind of serious trauma. Portals open up for certain periods when someone passes. And that's usually the portal that they're supposed to go into to move into, whatever your soul frequency is, it allows you to open up a doorway to a portal that's the same frequency. Some people are too freaked out to do it, or souls are too freaked out to do that, and they lose the opportunity. These doorways are only open for finite periods. So there are souls that need to be assisted to make that change and make that transition. Suicide victims get stuck. And this is why I say no one ever has. Please understand that suicide is not, it's not freeing. It's actually a form of imprisonment, which is very sad. And I know people who've passed that way. And it's not that I'm trying to distress anybody who's lost someone in that way. But if you have that knowledge, then you can engage somebody who has the ability to release that soul from that fourth dimensional purgatory. It's a form of purgatory. And it's not a punishment. What happens is, if you have a soul contract to come into a physical lifetime for a certain period of time, if you opt out, you have to wait in the waiting room until your lifetime would have ended. And I don't know how many times I have communicated with reading clients who've told me of somebody that they want to connect with. And as soon as I tune into that individual or that soul and I see them grey, I know that they're in that fourth dimension. And then I usually say, did they take their life? Most of the time the answer is yes, or we're not sure, or I thought that was the case. So I'm not the sort of person who knows how to open those doorways for those souls, but some people do, and that's the term, psychopumping.
All right, and let's take care of that, because immediately that there'll be people going, oh my God, so-and-so took their life. What's going to happen? I want people to know, again, from my perspective, because we all work differently in the spirit world and we've all got different experiences. I know and have been connected with those who have unalived themselves and they have gone to a beautiful place. It's not a level of suffering. So we just want people, don't worry. And again, Rachel, the responsibility, people that do what we do at the level that we do it, on a spiritual, loving level, energetic level, we have such a responsibility to take care of the responsibility that we have, because some people, no matter how many times you tell them, they will only hear what they want to hear, unfortunately. And it's like when I get out my pram a bit earlier, saying stop using your body to help souls pass because it's dangerous. Sometimes you have to get a little bit excited and say, listen, you silly old bag, just because people are like, oh, how rude, yeah, get mad about that, but wake up to hear it. We got to hear it on different levels. Yeah. So brilliant. So thank you for that. Thanks for also letting me, pull up my horse alongside yours for that moment, so people again can remember it's very different. There's different ways, and this is the way that you've been. The souls that have come to you, this is what they've shown up for you, and you've been able to help them and bring other people in to help them pass through or give the information. But it's good because we don't want anyone to, be darkened with energy that's here that tries to make them unalive themselves, because there are so many spirits, earthbounds, darker as well, that try to make people unalive themselves. So, it's such a, what would you say to those people?
There's always a better option. There's always a better option. Just don't take that option. And especially with people who have been through severe trauma, just understand that if you do unalive yourself, you are just doing exactly what those that have abused you want you to do. You're just giving yourself to them on a platter. Be obstinate. Say no. Try and find some sort of joy in your life and concentrate on that. Find healing so that that is not something that you're even considering. And it's interesting, as the aura breaks down with depression and guilt and grief and those sorts of things, which can be healed. There are ways to heal the aura very easily. Those thoughts come in. So that's also, you could have an attachment that's convincing you that that is your only option as well. And so that's why you have to absolutely 100% say, no, I'm not doing what they want me to do. I'm going the opposite direction.
It's such an important point, because as we witness you taking the Australian government down, taking them to their knees as a brave warrior of truth, as somebody who's gone through those absolute dreadful horrors and is standing. Anybody that would have thought, I can't go on, they would have missed this. They would have missed what's happening in Australia. Australia is such has been such a harmed, hurt land. And yet it is one of the most beautiful, prosperous, rich in heritage and history. And it's just such an incredibly interesting part of our balance on the whole planet, Australia. And now that the light is shining there, remember the Ring of Fire? That was like they were trying to take all the land down, kill all the animals, burn them all up, like moving on the lands. And of course, failed, because that's what happens with failures, they fail. And that really, to me, was the tsunami. There was a tsunami of fire. And then since then, we've been hearing so much. And now this great news, this just great, powerful news with you. It's just absolutely, completely mind-blowing. And again, we're just so proud of you, Rachel. You know, it takes such courage, you know, and there's a saying, if you can do it, you know. So let's move to some of the questions that the lovely viewers brought in for you. And I have to shrink the screen so I can see everything. Truth or Nothing says, it takes enormous courage to survive and live to witness such horrific experiences. God bless you, Rachel. And then Karen Kennedy, most people don't want to know of these great evil dark deeds. The light ones, the awakened ones know of these deeds and hold this knowledge. It's not easy to know of this. She's tried to tell people, some are not ready, but this will come out. And says dark porn fuels this, absolutely. Therese in Hat Teresa, some people have funny names. Thank you both for your courage, denouncing the genocidal elites. You're a great human being with true gifts of humanity, Rachel. Dots MC, hi Dots, he's always sending so much love. Super important, thanks Danny, Rachel, and everyone, sending love to all. Karen Kennedy again, my husband and I adopted a baby from a meth mom in California. I think how different my son's life could have been had he got stuck in the foster care system. He was in 3 homes for the first 6 months of his life. Some good, some not so good. I know the CPS does traffic little ones. Let's see. Here we are. This is CC Escrow, who says, what a truly amazing and gifted soul Rachel has. Thank you so much for sharing this. This person volunteers for survivors of human trafficking. And this person is called for healing of humanity through sound bath, Reiki healing, and equine horses therapy. Together we can heal through our gifts and life experiences. What an amazing time to be incarnated. This is Love Cats. I want to thank this incredibly brave lady for giving her testimony. She's a bright light in a sick world. I'm sorry, Danny, but after hearing what those disgusting evil bastards did to that 10-month-old baby and then burning him alive, my heart and stomach couldn't take anymore. So she watched as much as she could and wants to honor you, and I understand. You know, our last broadcast is, again, I gave it a graphic warning. This is from Natalie's story. Thank you so much, Rachel, for being so brave. She's been awakened since 2001, trying to get family and friends. But I guess people like her, watching people like you, Rachel, gives people strength. Here's one that I'll ask you to speak to if you don't mind. C. Pod Gore Elec. Dear Rachel, thank you for sharing. I was in the Good Ward orphanage in the late 60s to 70s. Some of the nuns were physically, mentally, and emotionally abusive. No shock there. In front of work, they acted like angels, but as soon as the workers left, they changed their behavior. So Peter Malanorcus is closing the museum room of the bones of the Aboriginal people that were killed. I know the Mulligan case very well. Sending you lots of blessings. Would you like to speak to that one?
Yes, so the Mulligan inquiry was around the 2007 point, and it was looking into the multitude of deaths of state wards and disappearance of state wards in the, I think it was from the 40s up until about the 70s for the terms of reference. They were, you know, over that period. So what's been described there is the common description. Some of these children were taken out and never returned. Death certificates for those that did actually have a body stay were not, that there were no autopsies that took place. And that's not legal. When a child dies, there has to be an autopsy because there has to be a reason for it. There weren't. And at least I think it was either 8 or 10 cases. I don't know the exact number. But the number of children who actually went missing were around 600. 600. Now, that orphanage was very close by to where I lived. My father had his property with the tunnels, access, he was processing children a lot. Many were used in dark, PORN. Be careful what I say because I know this is your channel. So the frustration with the Mulligan inquiry, and Ted Mulligan was the gentleman who ran the inquiry, is that quite simply it was just a rounding up of all the information and then it was placed under a suppression order. And interestingly, his son has absolutely soared in politics since then. And that's what happens. So everybody gave their testimony. I think some people went under what's called the redress scheme, where they might get up to about $50,000 for the horrific abuses that they suffered, and everything was suppressed. And of the huge number of perpetrators, I think 13 or so were charged, and 1 or 2 actually were convicted. It was such a ridiculous number that were actually looked into. So we had allegations against a cardinal, or someone who became a cardinal at a later date. We had allegations against politicians, high-up doctors, powerful businessmen, pretty much every walk of life, and it was all suppressed. Now, it's interesting that that particular suppression order is being quoted as the reason why my father's property at Stansbury on the York Peninsula is not being investigated for the 3 Beaumont children's remains that are in a sinkhole there. And that is because if they go and dig them up, they will find the remains of 3 wards of state who are also in the same sinkhole, as well as all of the other treasures that he kept on that property. And I saw a small sinkhole or cave. He made me go into it through a tunnel. I could easily show where the entrance of that is. It's very well hidden. And in that particular sinkhole, I saw roughly about 50 skulls. I was very small when I went in there and I couldn't count, but it was a small wall of small skulls, children's skulls. That was his treasures. There are other treasures. There are other treasures at that property. There's one particular spot that he pointed to when I was a child, as an adult, before my memories came in properly and I was still visiting that property. And he pointed at it and he said, dig there when I die. So there's another spot that we have to look at as well. And only I know where that is.
That's incredible. You posted on Facebook last week a birthday card.
Yes.
You kept, and do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because not only was this pig of a black soul who called himself your dad, did what he did on a mass scale, but known to the government, like Kathy O'Brien's dad, absolutely CIA just paid him to continue to groom her into a worse, torturous environment. Your pig of a non-father was the same. So the mockery that they do once they've tried to ruin the physical, mental, emotional soul, lose the soul, etc., they'll continue the torment verbally, like you did, mocking and thinking they're still, MK mind controlling you. Can you talk a little bit about that card if you're comfortable?
So that card was given to me on my 16th birthday by one of my father's very close mates, a female, who sexually abused me as a child and who was my main MK Ultra programmer and handler. That individual is funding and often comments on the troll page that I mentioned earlier. And so it was a very special date for that individual, and that's why I posted on that special date, because she ruined many of my special dates. In that 16th birthday card, she says to me, have a lusciously evil birthday. Do something along the lines of, do whatever you want to, what if it feels good. Literally, this is what she wrote. If it feels good, just do it. And that was the sort of personality that she had. She thought that was fine. Now, what's really, really amusing, before my memories fully came in, she did visit my former home. And I had the front part of many of the birthday cards that she'd given me over the years, kind of like in a mural on the kitchen wall with photographs and other little drawings and things. And it was just like a big mural. And you should have seen her face. She was horrified. She freaked out. She freaked out. Now, she's looking at them freaking out, and she said, "Where's the back of the cards?" Because I'd only put up the front of the cards. And I said, "Oh, I don't know, I must have thrown them out, or I've got them somewhere." And she said, "Burn them. Burn them." Well, that ignited my interest. Why was she so interested? Why was she so interested? And I had kept them. I had kept them. So even with the memory suppressed, there was part of me that knew I had to keep that evidence. And I have got a myriad of handwritten letters and cards from that individual. And the programming is in there. It's so obviously in there.
Yeah.
So they're in safe places, very
Yeah.
safe places.
Yeah. You know, it's that it comes to mind that be sure your sins will find you out. You mean no one is getting away. And while we're on this subject as well of, you know, the filth that's been leading and running and doing all these terrible things, we got to remember that every single system without exception on our planet, every single level of authority, whether education, science, history, medical, military, religious, education, government, they are all interlinked. There isn't a separation between any of them. If we knew how many cousins in the American government, who's the cousin of Obama and Pitt, and it's just unbelievable. People are finally like going, oh, hang on a second, something's shaking awake in me. Let me start looking into some of this. Like everything is there, but we've been so like, oh, no, no, no. You know, yesterday I was reading a friend of mine, Tony Rodriguez, he's so kind, and he's been through being stolen by a satanic family as a little boy, used up by them to practically the point of death, then sold into the American military, then used off planet because people don't believe that we've been going to the moon and Mars series. Like it's such old news now, but the public on the world are like, oh, no, no, we would have known. NASA would have told you. Of course they wouldn't tell you. That's stuff full of satanics. Let's not get started on that, but it's fact. And so if it's the first time you're hearing it, which I highly doubt it on this channel, you know, we need to get a clue. And so Tony was gently saying to this lady, you know, some of the things that, you know, he believes. And she said, I mean, at the end, she said, I don't care what happened. I will not let go of my love for Jesus. I will not look at this. I will not accept that. God is the only way. The Bible is the only way. And that keeps people safe as well. And I understand that. I used to be that, you know, that insecure, terrified, scared, brainwashed, clone acting person, which is obviously what that is. That's no freedom of speech. That's only believing what you've been programmed. And behind that is programming of fear. You're going to go to hell. You're going to burn to hell. You know, it's a lie, a lie. But people, it lights them up to the point of murder. It lights them up to the point of rage. They can't, you know, it shows how many unhealed people there are, but it's just so interesting. But back to anybody watching, please don't think there is a system on this planet that is not connected, unfortunately, to the darkness, the ties that are bound our earth. Would you agree with that, Rachel?
Yes, unfortunately. But what we're seeing at the moment is it's all being exposed. And so they're not very, I think that the thing is the arrogance. So you might have some intelligence, but they're so arrogant and so convinced of their superiority over the rest of us. And that is their downfall, again, along with their symbolism and their inability to work together. They might all seem to be working in alignment, but in actual fact, they will stab each other in the back at the very first opportunity. And that's what we're seeing now, because it's all falling apart now. They're all backstabbing. And, you know, as horrific as it is of what's gone on and what's happened, and you know, a reminder that there's been hundreds of years in preparation for this. The concentration camp victims were part of this process to get to this point. All the horrific things that have happened in the world, all the medical experimentation, all of the animal experimentation, everything that's happened has brought us to this point. It's horrific, but at least at this point we can look at them and recognize the stupidity and the arrogance.
Yeah.
It astounds me.
Yeah. You know, people that read and take the courage. So Kathy O'Brien, as we know, is what I call the American. I feel you're like in Australia, one of the most important voices in Australia. Gloria Masters, one of the most important voices in New Zealand. Kathy O'Brien, my lovely friend, most important voice in America. And the beautiful Jeanette Archer in the UK, who's coming on my channel soon, the most important voice in England. So we've got all you women who've survived, who have come out with, they call it receipts, whatever that means. I guess they mean proof when they say the receipts, all these social engineering words that we're supposed to learn, yawn. Anyway, it's just quite remarkable. But the names in the book of Kathy O'Brien, a lot of these men in particular, and some women, who are still at the forefront of leadership across every system. She names them in the book, guys. The book is called The Transformation of America. And this came out in the 1990s. Kathy O'Brien, Brien. So let's go back to some of these. Let me see, there's the guy, Tony Haynes here. There was a lovely, from Tony Haynes, can you tell Rachel the strongest soul that she is, they are the most worthy? This is from Heather Stubbs. Thanking Rachel for being so brave to tell of her horrific childhood memories. We owe it to her to listen and share with the world what has been going on. Can't build a new earth on lies and cover-ups, sending so much love. This is from Christy. A true light worker is not afraid to look at this darkness because we are so grounded in light and so aware of the dark that we can sit in the balance and observe without being absorbed. We witness and speak truth. There is no fear.
Wow. Wow, that's beautiful.
John Lomax, hi John. The evil is beyond sickening as the truth comes out. Shame and guilt will drive this evil into oblivion. The elites are failing and it can't happen soon enough. Let me see, I'm trying to find, there were so many. Avina Sativa, I listened to Rachel, she's confirming what I vaguely knew, but her account is but on description. I took copious notes and will get to work on my research and help support shining a light on the deepest, most depraved corners. This is from Claudette Blanc. Dear Rachel, thank you so much for your bravery. I'm sorry you had to go through that. I agree. You did choose your parents before coming. You are the perfect person to talk about this. The world needs to listen. No more head in the sand. You're a good, sensitive soul. Soldier's Voice, gone viral, shared. Thank you for everything you brought forward. Powerful. And someone says you're amazingly balanced, having witnessed and been through what you have. Sending love. There's so much love here for you, Rachel. I'm trying to find at least one of the questions here. Let me see.
There was one that came up that I took a note of, which asked me how I healed. Is it okay if I speak to that?
Yes, my darling, of
So,
course.
so
It's all about you, love. Yes.
So there's a lot to it. So I wanted to address it because it was a very, very good question. I have addressed this in multiple interviews previously, but I'll just try and put it in a nutshell. When I first started to remember, my body started to break down. So part of the programming is that you will not find your voice, and that if anything happens, if you speak out against these individuals who've abused you, you will die. That's one that, oh, you will be tortured, or you will be disfigured, or something horrible will happen. And so your body starts to freak out. And so I found I would also go in and out of alter states at that point. So this all helped me to remember, even though it was a horrible process, it's part of the process. At some point, someone close to me mentioned what Kathy teaches, and I adore Kathy, that you write it down, write down your memories. Don't type it, write it. She explains that in Transformation of America and PTSD, Time to Heal. I think she also talks about it in that book. There's something that with the process that allows you to take the memory from one part of the brain and place it in a different part of the brain. And you sort of look at it from a logical standpoint, as opposed to an incredibly emotional and traumatized standpoint. So I wrote a lot about what I'd gone through. as I went through that process, I got more and more righteous and frustrated and angry. And then I recognized that many of my younger family members were in danger. And so I transmuted my frustration and my terror and my fear into I need to protect. And that was a saving grace, because it took me out of victim and turned me into fighter, survivor, warrior. And that I needed to do that. I don't know that I protected anyone in my family because it was all ignored for so long. But if those younger individuals have been abused, at least they now know that the trailblazing has been done, and so that they can then speak up at some point when they feel safe, and they won't have the same pushback that myself and my two siblings, corroborating siblings, have had, Andrew and Ruth. I also made sure that I ate very well. I took very good care of my body. I would go for long walks. Walking was an incredible therapy. And that is actually something that I believe Kathy has also mentioned. When you do any kind of movement that's symmetrical, where one side of the body has to correlate with the other side of the body, yoga, dancing, walking, running, all of those things, swimming, it helps to marry the two sides of the brain, because during MK Ultra abuses and any kind of traumatizing abuse, you can have the two hemispheres of the brain can cease to communicate or cease to operate in unison. So that was something also that I did. I did take medications, prescription medications I was in chronic pain. I managed to get off those. I was on antidepressants for a very long time. I managed to get off those. The only thing that I imbibe of now is caffeine. I've cleaned up my diet. I never speak ill of myself. I've opened up myself psychically. I do that as my work now. So many different things were put into place so that I could come out fighting and be in the state that I'm in now. Some people listening to this might just take one or two of those things and use those. I really do thoroughly recommend reading Transformation of America and PTSD, Time to Heal. They really made a difference. Annika Lucas's book also, A Quest for Love, was a very important book for me to read. And there are countless other survivors who've got the most amazing literature that they've put out. Max Lowen's another one. She puts out all sorts of information. She's a healer. So, and Jeanette Archer, I adore. So, you know, seek out. That was another thing that helped immensely. It helped a lot that I had two siblings that had been through similar and almost identical abuse, but they're 18 and 19 years older than me. So we were a little bit of a distance from one another age-wise. But speaking to other people who've gone through the same thing has a catharsis that no psychologist or psychotherapist, psychiatrist or social worker will ever understand unless they've been through the same experience. So speaking to other people who've gone through the same traumas will help hugely. Yeah. Oh, you're muted, darling.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Thank you for, again, sharing our friend Kathy O'Brien's great books. PTSD, A Time to Heal is a short book on Amazon. Well, don't go to Amazon, get it off her website, which is Transformation of America. Go straight to her website, and she, enjoys her hard work and her suffering and the funds that she should get. So the PTSD book, as you said, you write down, like moving it in the body, making it physical, writing it down, it starts to shift that stuck energy, and it starts to delete the programming that is shut down, that are bound up with fear and torture and pain and links to all of that unpleasantness. And the minute you start to move it with the pen, as you know, it really is helpful. And then reading her Transformation of America, getting all the names, understanding how these pigs at the top, the way they carve up the world between them, that they literally, the men, mostly men at the top of all the governments, they carve the world up. They sit there, they give each other pieces of our world, and we're nothing. We're literally cattle, farm cattle. We hear these words, but I really need people to land in them. This is where it's been. And that Rachel is giving you her testimony. Kathy O'Brien's giving you hers from the 90s. And we owe so much to women like you guys. We do. And you've really burst open the truth. And at this stage now, the people that can't hear it, that's okay. There's enough of us now that we can take care of business. But those that choose to ignore and not acknowledge the reality they live in and just hope it all goes away. Well, that never works. Generations have proven that of suffering. That doesn't work. So let me read another comment here for you, Rachel. This is from Tanis. What an incredible interview. Rachel, I send you so much strength and peace and love. What a brave and wonderful soul you are to come forth with your story. Danny, thank you for bringing out the dark truth that we need to face, but moreover understand. So Tanis has a question. Being a white lighter, since I read Sylvia Browne's books, Journey to the Soul in 2004, in which she said, if you are reading this, you are a white lighter. Is there any other way to raise someone's dark soul? I use white light on them, and that just means I surround them with white light. But is there another way as well? I surround random people, say in line at a store, and I see them shift and move and look around as if something just hit them, lol. I laugh because these years I've seen signs. It really does work. Thank you, much love.
Well, it's interesting. I do teach a particular modality for getting rid of attachments, which is very effective. So you just visualize whatever the attachment is turning into gold dust. It seems very simple, but a lot of the most simple things in life are the most effective. That is one of the techniques that I use. Interestingly, when I started to use that, I used it a few times, and then those entities don't bother me anymore. And I recognized after a while that it's actually like a soul death for that particular soul, the dark soul. But what it actually forces it to do is to go back to the source and start its incarnations over again. Most dark souls fear going back to source and having to start again, because there's a potential for altruism. There's a potential for making that choice, and that's something that they find terrifying, which is quite interesting. Also, when you send a soul back to source, it'll never be the exact same soul. It will never be the exact same 100% of that soul frequency. It'll go back, amalgamate with all the other soul energy, and then come out in parts. So it will never, it's a form of soul death in a way. Light souls, that can't happen to us unless we choose it. And most light souls wouldn't choose that. So that's another modality that I like to share with people.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I want to say, while we're on the subject of souls, that there's been this long perpetrated sentence that, let's say, those that believe in a singular God, that, and it's okay, don't get triggered, guys. Watch where the programs are in the body, because we got to be more aware of what we go, no, you know. So the soul, I've literally, so when people say the image of God, God made us in his own image. Well, I know exactly what that means. I know the exact truth and reality of that statement, because I watched a soul leave a human vessel. And I used to think, and I had an idea before I physically had the experience, that it's the energy in everyone. That's what the soul is. That's the image of God, because God is creator energy, source energy. The soul is an energy frequency that animates the body that we're in. And on many levels, it does different things too, of course. And I realized that, you know, because a flower and a plant and an elephant and a giraffe, I mean, how could they all have been made in the image of God? That's silly. It's not a physical representation. It's an energetic representation. So it helps us to really understand and think on a deeper level and remove the stiffening program of, let's say, the rigid Christianity, which was my training, fire, brimstone, sinner, going to hell. It is such wickedness that nothing of love would ever have put that into the field. And it's okay for us to go, oh, I'm not sure that really suits me. You mentioned something very important. This is for everybody. Never speak ill to yourself. The fact that we are mostly made of water, and water has memory. Every time we're cruel to ourselves, we are holding that. We are holding that frequency. And mostly the reason why we verbally abuse ourselves is because we've heard it elsewhere, and we just continue. Abusers can be long dead, and here we go in our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, still carrying on being abusive to ourselves. Here is another lady, Helen Ellis. Thank you, Danny, for talking to Rachel. I've watched most of Rachel's interviews, and I highly recommend Rachel's psychic course. And I was thinking of when Danny will interview Rachel, and here it is. Infinite love and gratitude. Thanks, Helen. Oh, here's a good one. Truth or nothing. What is the technology Rachel talked about to find the ley lines, L-E-Y, the ley lines?
Okay, the technology is our eyeballs. So we have cryptochrome photoreceptors that are magnetoreceptors heavily expressed in the retina. And this is according to a National Library of Medicine study by Foley, Giger, and Rupert. Interestingly, it was published on the 21st of June, 2011. So on the winter solstice or summer solstice, depending on which part of the world you're in. That is such an important study because it indicates that we have just exactly the same CRY2 cryptochrome photoreceptor that allows us to see magnetic frequencies as pigeons and insects and all birds that use those lines to navigate. And what is absolutely fascinating to me is I looked further into the studies, and there's a gentleman called Robin Baker who did a great number of studies on human magnetoperception. And the academic trolling this poor gentleman has accrued for daring to speak about this. I looked up some of the studies that are trying to refute what he's proven, and some of these studies are just one paragraph. Basically, it's a troll who's an academic saying, not true. And these idiots who are trying to do these replication studies, because obviously, in science, you have to be able to replicate the same conditions to have the same results. But these people, these troll academics, would take an individual and remove all of the senses. They'd blindfold them, take away sound, and expect them to navigate the earth, using magnetoperception. As Robin Baker pointed out, it's just magnetoreception is just one element in an integrated navigational armory that involves all the available senses and uses a wide range of environmental information. When do you see a pigeon flying blindfolded? I mean, the stupidity of some of these people, but again, it's this arrogance. And this, I think that he suffered this sort of abuse because he's exposing what the esoteric secret societies do not want the common man to know. We're not allowed to know. We're just these lowly, cattle, as you described earlier. And poor old Robin Baker, he also pointed out in one of his other studies as a summarization of the sort of attacks that have come against him, that there's a stark contrast between positive results and negative interpretations, which he describes as being an unexplained feature of the literature on human magnetoreception. All Indigenous cultures talk about things like ley lines. So your American Indian cultures talk about them as dragon lines or dream lines. We've got the Australian original people call them dream lines and song lines. There are other original peoples who also call them song lines. So the ley lines it's a combination of sound and light frequency that works together and belies the lines. So the technology that I use to see the ley lines is my eyes. I go out into endemic scrub, endemic meaning that no one's gone out there and bulldozed it and then put in rows of trees. This is scrub that's symbiotic, that all works together, all grows together. All the plants and trees communicate through things like mycelium underground, and they're all interconnected. And when a ley line runs through a place like that, the trees and plants avoid the ley naturally. They don't like to grow within that frequency. It creates a natural corridor through nature. And when you stand in the cross section of that corridor, if you're lucky enough to know what the signs are, you can see a perfect circle running through. It's absolutely beautiful. Once you see it for the first time, you can never unsee it. And that's what I hear mostly in my course from people who've seen it themselves and then gone out in nature, and I can't not see them now. Where they cross, you get these beautiful spheres in nature where nothing grows. It's just this big bare spot. And cameras pick them up. So that's brilliant. So that's the technology. And obviously, as I've just described, there is scientific literature that backs up that we can do this.
That's so beautiful. We're going to continue with some of the comments here from a month ago when we first got together. There's so much love for you, like I said. This heart to heart says, I'm also in awe, Danny. Rachel is an amazing human, has such a beautiful heart for others. And It Shall says, so touching. I feel the same love frequency in Rachel's, Gloria Masters in New Zealand, and Kathy's voice, Kathy O'Brien in America. They are so powerful. The stronger they are, the softer they are. Bless you. Much love. More
Oh,
love.
what a compliment.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think last time I said to you that in your voice, you can hear the different tonalities. And these often are the voices and vibrations of the greatest healers, bringers of light, and often people who've gone through the worst unthinkable atrocities, unfortunately. This is Claire Hobelin. She says, it took me a few days to take myself listening to you both because I knew it was going to be powerful. It made me come back to a nightmare I once had about ambrosia, little one. I don't know what that means. Maybe you do. Ambrosia, little one. Still, I want to hide and roll. I believe a lot of our admin heads are that kind of unsold people. Just look at the head of the hexagon in UE. Thank you, dearest. I'm sending love to the world now. Mandy says, thank you, Rachel, for sharing your story, raising awareness and helping others. Okay. This is from Huge Frog. Some people's names are so funny. Oh my God.
Good.
So can you please share why and how entities show vision to people? How can we know whether it's from the right source or not? And this is from Dr. Asangla Longkuma Kohima in Nagaland, India. Hi, Dr. Asangla.
Okay, so, well, one thing for people to know is that we actually have a different concentration of rods and cones in the retina that allow us to pick up on ultraviolet and infrared light at the peripheral aspects of the vision. So you will see, and ultraviolet, you'll see angelic beings that use ultraviolet light to communicate with us. They'll appear in that bandwidth of the electromagnetic spectrum. And then you have your infrared entities, usually are your dark entities. So if you're picking up on things in the corners of your eye or your vision, it possibly is something significant. The way, I guess, to tell, and I did a masterclass for the Lay Love Down project, which is my project with Ben Hawkes last night. And one of my dear friends was in there, and Nari, she mentioned, when your hair stands on end, it's a sign that there's something around you. You see dogs, their hackles go up. It's not just because they're feeling anger or fear or frustration. They're picking up on something, and the hairs on their bodies are standing up. It's a piezoelectric response to stimulus. So if that feeling comes over and it makes you feel hot and cold and scared, the entity is probably not a great one. Go with your bodily response. If you, on the other hand, feel elated, it's probably a good entity. Most dark entities cannot produce joy in the physical body. They will make you shrink away. Also, a lot of very dark entities will use the ambient temperature in a room to manifest some sort of apparition or presence. Light souls don't tend to do that. High light souls don't tend to need to use the ambient presence of warmth of the room to present. So if you're going into a room on a regular basis that always feels colder than all the other rooms in the house for no apparent reason, there could be something in there that's not, of benefit to you, if that makes sense.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. This is from Kerry Baker. Bless you, Rachel. You've been through horrific experiences. It's amazing you are sane. I hope you continue to heal. I was 12 and living in Adelaide and going to Glen Elg Beach at the time. I always wondered about the sad story of the Beaumont children. Thank you for finally shedding light on this. These people are so evil. You're so very brave and appreciated for letting us know about this. And it is hard to listen. Bless you. Again, much
And
love.
that name Glen Elg is a palindrome. The Satanists are absolutely obsessed with palindromes. A palindrome is a word that is spelt the same way forwards as backwards. There is a reason why those children were taken from that specific beach. And it's part of this ritualistic behavior. that they're involved in spell casting also.
Spell casting, you know, again, as we kind of take down all the systems, people realizing that spelling black magic with a K in particular, it never went anywhere. They've been using practices. People can't accept that the military is jam-packed and stuffed full of witches and warlocks being the male and witches being the feminine. What do you say to that, my love?
100% correct. And this is something that a lot of people are not aware of. And you look at Michael Aquino is a fantastic example of that. But if you look at people who go into the military, do not realize that they actually sign over their children and grandchildren for experimentation as part of the signing up process. Who would do that? Who would do that? Dark souls, witches, warlocks, people using spell casting, soul contracts against humanity.
Yeah, an unending source of supply, unfortunately. Okay, we have this lady here. This is Mariciela. What a pretty name, Mariciela. She says, deep and heartfelt appreciation and respect. I've just attempted to email you, Rachel, and it could not be delivered. I would like to book a personal reading, please. Perhaps in the fall I can take your course. That would be such a blessing. So at this point, because a lot of people, God bless them, they never go underneath the video. They go, what do I do? And I understand. I used to be like that until I had a channel. I had no idea how to navigate. So let's say and spell your email out loud and give your website for those that were like I used to be.
All right, beautiful. Okay, so if they want to contact me, they need to go to my website. So it's www.6science, that's all one word, .com. So www.6science.com. And there you'll find a form where you can actually contact me through the website. Whether or not you're signing up for the course or you just want to email me for a reading, you go through the website. I have given out my email address before in another interview with a dear friend of mine, JCK, and I learnt my lesson. Don't do that. It was not good. I got hundreds and hundreds of emails, and it was too much.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's raise the point here for your website, sixth. So the number 6, TH, for the sixth number. Sixth Science. Brilliant. Now, before that, again, if we break down the fact that the systems of every authoritative level of everything we can think of and can't think of is and has been infiltrated, the www transpires and transponds to 666. So for years, as all the time I've been using the internet, we've been putting in 666, the mark of the beast, the acknowledgement to Satan, the dark one, Lucifer, whatever you want to call him, Beelzebub, ugly twat, who isn't going to take care of any of you. All of you have done your deals and done your slayings and done your, Satan's going to look after me. He looks after no one. Nobody, none of you have got safe passage. Not one of you. It's never going to have been worth it for what is coming to all of you. I'm sure you've already seen that already. So yeah, 666 is the www. And then what you've done without realizing, you cancel it out with the 4th, 6th, the 6th Science. You overrode it, you clever, beautiful goddess, you of the world. Okay, so that's Marciela. So Jasmine Erdley says, I know exactly where she's talking about. Bel Air, Blackwood area. It's always felt very off to me. This is Renee Pollen. She's so sweet. My heart grieves deeply. I feel so damn angry it's allowed to happen. I feel nauseated, but as I swallow, I call out to the universal love to saturate you, wrap arms around you, guarding your heart as all the little ones. May their guardian angels work overtime to protect their hearts and souls. Your bravery knows no bounds. And that's from Renee Pollen. She's such a sweet lady. Thank you, Renee. That was to you, my darling Rachel. Let me see. I know there's so many here. Here's a question from Tapaksky. My question for Rachel, when do you see us elevating to this beautiful new energy? I really want it to be sooner than later.
When I heard that we were coming into astrologically 4 years of truth, and apparently that began, Annika Lucas shared this with me in November of last year. When I heard that, I felt such great joy because I knew it was coming. I knew that the undoing of all the darkness was going to happen at some point in my lifetime. I suspected it was going to be around my age of 50, because during the near-death experiences I had as a child, one of the reasons I kept coming back into my body was I was assured there would be a time where I would witness the coming down, the taking down of these dark souls. So I believe with the ley lines coming into this permanent harmony time that the geobiologist Rory Duff described in his interview with Pam Gregory recently, that is huge. That is massive. We're coming into permanent harmony time. So with that, that takes away all the power of the ritual acts that they do on those specific dates, because there's no specific date to do it on anymore. It dilutes anything that they try and do, completely dilutes it. It also brings us into the 5th dimensional frequency permanently on Earth. We can keep going higher from that point. So as we come out of the 3rd, 4th dimension into the 5th dimension, a lot of attachments cannot exist here anymore. A lot of the puppeting of these people who have these dark drives, that can't exist in that frequency. So this is when it's happening. So I believe from December onwards, we're going to see things completely collapse and then rebuild.
That's so wonderful. I really, really support you in that expression. And the knowing that the reason why so many people are now like awakened to look around and to question everything is because of the amount of light flooding. We could call it sun codes, light codes. The earth herself is ascending. We have no choice but to ascend with her because we're part of her. We have a soul agreement with her soul. So as she ascends and upgrades and up levels, we have to, whether we like it or not. So we can go many different expressions or explanations as to why we are evolving, but it is happening. And then I love to remind everyone that the dark, black, horrible spelling that, I believe there were reptilians and greys here. I believe they were in cahoots with the dark, demonic, possessed ones that were running the planet in all the 14 families, which you can come back to in a second. And yet they are failing. Their magic no longer can hold. That's another reason why we are bursting through and seeing through. They failed. The magic isn't strong enough to withhold the billions of us now. It's just so beautiful. And we witness it. You can hear something like that, but then you actually get to witness it. Then now, this is a question. I'm going to ask it. It's in the comments, and it's by NMWBE. Rachel, what do you know of Nicole Kidman's dad and herself? That is the first part of the question. You want to answer that?
Okay.
You don't.
So my main MK Ultra programmer, an abuser, she was a childhood abuser, sexual abuser also, studied at Sydney University at the same time that Fiona Barnett, who's also a survivor from Australia, her MK Ultra programmer and abuser was lecturing in psychology and hypnosis. So my abuser studied under Fiona Barnett's abuser. And in actual fact, the two of them look alike. I won't name them, but they look uncannily alike, and I believe they're related. So that links my father to that ring. I don't have personal experiences with Kidman or the father, but it links the two rings. And my father was also involved with the Anne Hamilton Byrne ring. The Hamilton name is in my family. We're connected by blood. So the rings in Australia are all interconnected. They all interrelate. And a lot of them are interrelated by blood.
Yeah, always the way. And there's been incest between generations because the focus on keeping bloodlines as pure as possible. It's a reality. Look at all the chinless wonders in Parliament in Great Britain. We call them chinless wonders. They look really peculiar. Look at the Rockefellers. What a strange. I mean, because that's unkind. Well, I really don't think you're going to care when you really find out some of the major atrocities that have been perpetrated on you and your families for generations.
Yeah.
Care ye not. Care for self. Speak truth. Here's the second part of that question. I know you've kind of gone over it, but let's do it again. What is the intention of doing horrific sacrifices on ley lines? What does it do to the rest of us when they do these things on ley lines?
Okay. It prevents us from ascending. It prevents the earth from ascending to this new dimensional frequency. And so that has been thwarted for some time, but it can't be stopped anymore. So it's simply prolonged the agony. It's prolonged the struggle. It's hard to exist in the third dimensional plane when you're a soul having a human or other animal existence. It's just held us back. It also programs the earth for misery, torture, death. It means that it permeates our lives. A lot of these ley lines run through people's homes, and we wonder why people have sleep insomnia, sleep problems, sleep apnea, get sick. If you sleep within or work within a Hartman or Curry line, as described in Rory Duff's book, which is a guideline to ley lines, earth energies and vortexes, you can actually become ill over long periods of time. This is really important information. People need to know how to dowse or to go out and see the lays so they can make sure they're not living or sleeping or working for long periods in those lines. So it basically, if you're doing something horrible in a ley line, that connects energetically to a large area. It pours out this negative frequency, which affects everybody, every living thing in that area. So this is why we need to take the ley lines back.
It's a really good point that you raise, and I just want to add a little bit to it. The fact that, okay, so years ago, I was sitting at a friend's house having a coffee, and I couldn't believe how many spooks kept looking in the window. And she just moved into this house, and she had two boys, and one of them had a lot of, bless him, challenges with autism, but other things. He was a giant boy, and he was could be very aggressive. He hadn't learned to kind of manage himself. Just cut 2 years later, he's doing great. He's a brilliant, brilliant person, but he was a child here in between the pubescent stage. So I'm sitting having this coffee with my friend, and I'm aware, I'm like, Jesus, how many? And we call them looky-loos. When there's so many spirits, one after another, looking in the window. I'm like, this is really strange. I was babysitting the house for her and her husband. I think they'd gone out for dinner. And there's another girl with me. We were just watching the kids because, they needed a break, from moving in. And so I told them when they came back, they were all in a spiritual path. And I said, let me come in and see where I can find it. There's something, it's like a train dropping people off. It's just like, we need these out of your house, So I went back the next day and did, with sage and with salt and with prayer and with Bibles and with all the different tools that I've learned to use over there, the tools of, the ancient technology that came before the Bible was written, that the indigenous that connect to the planet and her power and her ley lines and her electromagnetic fields all knew. And I did a ton of work in there, literally shifted. Everybody walked in and felt it instantly. They felt the shift, but unfortunately the lady just could not allow it. She came in and it all went back. It all went straight back. And I said to her, did you change what we did? And she said, I did. I'm like, I'm sorry, that's why, So what I saw clairvoyantly was a literal train running through the front room and through the garden and out and dropping off spooks. It was a drop-off point. So and I'd never seen that in my life, so I know it exists because I physically saw it. But it tells you that the ley lines, there's so many different elements, and that was an open portal, of a dropping off point. And you can do something to protect, to move, to cover, to shift, to intend for that not to, so anyway, right. Anything you need to say
I
on
love that. Yes, because I actually describe ley lines as like a train station. It's this corridor of energy. All of the different dimensions come off that corridor of energy. When we come into a human body as a baby, we come through a ley line to get to the mother. When we die, we go out through a ley line to another dimension. It is like a train station. So it's so amazing that you have that, because that's my analogy for it. That's fabulous.
Yeah, it's so true. And again, as we invite people to open their minds to, every single system without exception being infiltrated, we have to understand that the energetics on the planet are known by the powers that were running it. They're known. And so if you go to the island of Kauai, where I used to live, and you go to the very, very, very farthest part of the island on the map, it's called Polehale, Polehale. And I have a piece of labradorite that actually looks exactly like the giant cliffs at Polehale. Along the top are all the military rounded dome-looking internet satellite ground receivers. There's also an ancient temple, a Heiau, up there where they used to bury the dead. And again, very sacred land portal on that piece of land. And again, they all know that's why they move around our beautiful American Indian bones, move them around, build their bloody houses on top, desecrate the land because they're sacred power points. I'm going to get to the point. The last time I was there on that beach, it's so ethereal at the end of that beach, and it's a really, you cannot walk to it yet. It's a 4-mile drive down the bumpiest, holiest road. It rains all the time in Kauai. It is a hell of a journey to get to this beach at the very, very end, where you can go no further. And I'm walking there, and the skies are lavender and pink, and it's just like, you're in another dimension. The first time I went there, I saw a literal diamond-shaped craft, and it was cloaked, and it was covered in little mirrors, reflecting everything around it, sky, sea. That's why it was invisible. That's cloaking technology. Behind me in the grass area, I saw a giant mirror that was also reflecting up to this craft that sat there. This is in Kauai, guys, and on Polehale Beach. Now, as I'm walking, again, I'm hoping to see this craft again, just in case it's there. And all of a sudden, the sky, for just a second, right there, opened up, and a black-looking camera, surveillance camera, just popped in and then popped out again, just to let me know. So as we look for these points on the planet that have been controlled, taken over, and weaponized by the military, by the governments, by science, by the elites, by the Satan worshippers, let's say. It's all true, guys. Titter ye not. I saw something else. Now there is a saying that the souls that leave our planet leave on Polehale Beach on Kauai. That is the saying. On the same island, there is another beach called Anahola Beach. It is said the souls on our planet come through Anahola Beach. Now, Mark Zuckerberg owns the biggest amount of land right above Anahola Beach. He's built a building that goes several stories low, and it takes you, because I've done it, guys, I've been there, so I'm walking my talk. It takes a full 20 minutes to drive past his front wall. Now, the front wall, listen to this. They've used the indigenous porous volcanic rock that is everywhere on Kauai, this island of Kauai, that holds everything that's ever happened on the land, these porous volcanic vibrational high frequency rocks. It's a good long 20 minutes. Now, why is that dingbat allowed to own so much land on the island of Kauai anyway? But there is so much land. It's a huge industrial complex, and they are set up directly over the sacred beach of Anahola on Kauai. Now, I've reported on this before, bringing it back into the awareness again. It is our duty as a humanity to look into these things. It is our duty as a humanity to love on, be aware of, send frequency energy of love, an opening to all these sacred land masses on the planet, which includes the ley lines. If we keep forgetting that everything is connected, every system is connected, all of these awful groups that are still trying to hold down and harness energy frequency from us on our planet, then we're going to miss out on being part of the greatest healing on earth. What do you think about that?
So isn't that interesting that he happens to be there? So that to me is an attempt to occlude those energies coming in. Because again, when you hear names like Black, ROCK, and that this is one of the companies that owns most of our world, what does that name say to you? That's what they want for our Earth. That's what they're trying to create. Every time that name is mentioned, it brings a pull over the Earth. So obviously they're trying to stop that energy frequency from coming in. Well, isn't it interesting that the Earth can decide whether or not she moves her portals? Because they can fluctuate and move depending on what's going on with the inner core. So I would say that she probably will move herself, make sure that those energy frequencies can keep coming in. And this is the thing. We're talking about a conscious planet. It's a living planet. This is why it has an atmosphere, because it has an auric field, because it has a soul. And all the dead planets are obviously dead. This is a living one.
Definitely.
And we have to protect. One of the original Australians here that often speaks publicly, a gentleman called Clint Walker, says that the country gets lonely for people. We are her custodians. We have a responsibility to keep her healthy. So I love what you say. That's what we do. We send in those loving, beautiful frequencies, and you can do this remotely. You don't have to be in that location. Your intent is your most powerful tool. Send your intent to clear that space so that whatever they're trying to do in there will be thwarted.
Absolutely.
And if you do it en masse, you're very, very powerful.
That's so beautiful. Here's another question for the interview. This is from RK. I've seen people dancing strangely in churches and shouting out repeatedly, Alleluia and Amen. They are described as being touched by the Holy Spirit. Some even behaved and act like wolves and screaming like wolves and tigers after being touched by Holy Spirit. After learning what Amen means and where it really came from, I can't help but wonder what is really going on with these people. Are they possessed by demons, controlled by negative entities or aliens? Or are they connected to the AI Black Goo? Please help me understand. Thanks for all the wonderful work you've done for us.
So from my understanding, Amen is a reference to Amun-Ra, which is an ancient Egyptian deity. And in my opinion, because my father was obsessed with them, they are not individuals to be toyed with or to be called upon in any way, shape, or form. And again, apologies to the Catholic community for using, because that's something that's special to them. And I'm very sorry that it's been co-opted and spellbound in that way. But you can still have a communication with your God. You just don't have to use what the Catholic Church tells you to use as far as your language is concerned. As far as the gyrations and that behavior, I tend to look at animalistic behaviors as demonic, because in our social constructs, that sort of behavior is frowned upon for various reasons. To me, it's not really appropriate. However, we have original peoples that do those sorts of behaviors, but usually it's for an incredible purpose. I'm very wary of churches. I know that a lot of the churches in the UK, for instance, are built upon old Roman pagan sites with the sacrificial rocks being used as foundation stones, and they're all sited on ley lines. The Freemason goes out with a sighting rod. Again, visual aspects, visual references, because they're visible. I don't think that necessarily would describe something that was holy or of the light in a church scenario. With original peoples doing ceremony, that to me would be of light. In a church, it doesn't appear to me to be of light. Having said that, it depends on the experience of the person doing that, or those witnesses to it. Does it make them feel scared? Does it make the hair on the back of their hair on the head or their body stand on end in disgust or horror, or do they want to shy away from it, or does it make them feel included? Do they want to get close to it? So I guess it would also depend on the individuals witnessing and acting it out.
Incredible. We could go another 6 hours here with all the information that we have between us, but you mentioned a very interesting point that your dad was obsessed with the Egyptians or Egyptology. And just to jump back to the Amun-Ra, which is where the word amen comes from, it's like they get us with the www, which is 666. They got us by infiltrating the word amen, so that no matter what we do, every single prayer we pray, we will always end it with amen, because it is a nod to Satan. When we can come to terms, it's not our fault. Jesus didn't do this. Man did this. The church did this. And people are just like, no, no, I'm so sorry. I didn't do it, but we're trying to share with you what has been done. The faction is the Enlil, the Sumerian bad bastard Enlil that tried to shut down. And they're the ones that do the blood worship, sacrifice, harming. They're the ones who've infiltrated the Satanic side of life on earth. Enlil, Marduk. And people go, oh yeah, but Marduk was Enki's son. Well done, Sherlock. It doesn't mean that Enki's son, Enki the good guy, Ea, who actually tried to warn and save humanity and warn us about the flood that was coming. There've been so many floods in all the history books and all the holy Bibles and all the sacred Mahabharata and the Upanishads and the Vedas and the 5 Hindu holy books and the ancient scripts and scripts and Sanskrits and etc. But Marduk was the son of Enki, and he was teased and ingratiated by the power his uncle Enlil had. So he left his father, broke his heart, and stepped across. Marduk has mimicked as the Amun-Ra, and right now I'm forgetting who they all belong to, but I know that side of the dark is Enlil, Marduk. There was another son that Enlil had, but for right now I'm not remembering. But that's all right. You guys can go look it up. You know, it'll do you good to put some energy into researching for yourself rather than just listen and move on to the next thing. Now, while we're on the subject of amen to Amun-Ra, an Egyptian god on the Enlil side, we want to remember something also, that Akhenaten and his wife Nefertiti had a son, Tutankhamun. And if we look, as we need to be looking at how words are broken down and co-opted and corrupted by the dark. Tut, Ankh, which is the beautiful key of life, the Egyptian symbol, the Ankh, the A-N-K-H. Tut, Ankh, Amun. Now, the original boy, born of Akhenaten and Nefertiti, his last name wasn't Amun. It was most likely Aten with his father's name, Akhenaten. There's many scholars that argue over this element of Egyptology. Regardless, yeah, when we start to, and who do we mostly hear about? Tutankhamun. You see, we got to recognize, look at the word atonement. It was never meant to be atonement. It's at one meant. At one with self, at one mentally. It is our duty as humans to start paying more attention. It's actually very exciting when we realize, oh my goodness, it's horrible, it's horrific. But rather than hear a couple of women bang off information like we're doing, we're giving the opportunity to really dig in and give some good nuggets. Now, here is a good question for you, lady. Chantal Breeze-Claz, do you know anything about Mozart, a 33rd degree Freemason, and how he was able to reconcile his affiliation with this group and can create such angelic music? Was his premature death related to it? Thank you.
Fantastic question. I don't know enough about it. I watched a movie on it, and I'm not really one for classical music, but I'd be interested to see how much of his sonatas and his compositions are actually 432 hertz, because apparently a lot of classical music is 432 hertz. But then you have compositions like Bach and Wagner, which are very dark, and you don't want to listen to them because they're horrible. So I assume that they are not 432 hertz, but I'm not a musician, so I wouldn't be able to say.
Well, interesting. All I know about Mozart, I mean, I was obsessed with him growing up. When I was 12, I did a project on him. So I remember that he's born in Salzburg, lived in Austria, and used to go to Vienna to play for Marie Antoinette and Louis, her husband, and others in the royal palace. And his father, Mozart's dad, was the music teacher, scholar, lecturer of the palace, and used to bring young Mozart along with him. And by the time Mozart was 6, he was already playing and showing extraordinary talent and already at the point of composition. I personally had not heard, right, that Mozart was a 33rd degree Mason, but that's not always a bad thing either, because they're not all evil, of course. And people at the elite level would be automatically entered into certain levels of society, some unbeknown, hoodwinked, that they were going to have their talent corrupted to the dark side. And it is about frequency. Interesting to note that we had this time of music, these composers, Mozart, Beethoven, Tchaikovsky, Johann Strauss. I love Strauss. I love the Viennese waltzes. But there was a point in time where there was a condensed element of all this harmony coming onto our planet, and then it was there for us. And they were all seemingly beyond talented. And they brought this instrumentation, this music through their bodies, the solfeggio of the body, the solfeggio of the soul. And then we jump to another period of time, the Renaissance period, or they call it in America and Canada, the Renaissance. The Renaissance. How is it that we then have this amazing cluster of artists, Renoir, Cézanne, Degas, Monet, Manet? I mean, it's just absolutely unbelievable that, again, there was a condensed amount of time where they're bringing these paintings and these different light anomalies and these different feelings that emote something in us, And I think, again, if we want to take time as beings to start to map these periods of time, look at these original, beautiful, historical, architecture, paintings, frequencies. The 432 is the natural harmonic of the body. Of course, music is very corrupted. We really do invite people the invitation to re-question, because we have to remember that the stories have been twisted. I never read anywhere, I don't know Mozart, I wasn't there when he was a little boy, when he was born. All I have, like you and everybody else, is what to go on, unless you've got somebody watch you go, I was Mozart, no, and I was Tutankhamun, and I'm Odin, and I'm Beethoven, and I think, oh, bless you, Poppet. No, you weren't. You can't all be these great leaders in one body, it's just not possible, and it's silly, and for me, I always say, well, I was the tea girl, I was washing up in the kitchen. Let's have some humbleness. Let's try and break down that we weren't all the custodians of the crystals of Atlantis. We weren't all the queen of Atlantis. We're not all mad at Enki because he took down. It's like, we've got to stop that. These stories, and they're perpetuated sometimes by people who, they're doing hypnosis of whatever regard, and they're, encouraging story, or where's that story coming from? Through the person. But anyway, I don't want to get too much into that. But again, it's so important that we've got this precious time, you and I, to share information, to answer some of the questions, and bring together, our individual understandings. But again, we're here to share you with the world more, to those that may not have seen you yet, for them to understand what you've survived, Rachel Vaughan, and that you've taken down the Australian government and you've forced them to their knees, and they have to acknowledge you now. And now that you're getting a payout, which is worth nothing compared to what you've gone through, that now it'll be a tsunami like it is for P. Diddy and hip hop and the gangster rap weaponized environment. Let's see if we've got another question. Is there anything you want to say to my last comments too, while I pull up another comment for us?
Well, just wanted to go back to what we're talking about with my father being obsessed with these Egyptian deities. He even had as his Facebook icon the skull and crossbone with the 322, which is a Masonic number, but he had a dog skull because his resident demon was Anubis. And so I saw a conjuring of this entity as a child also in a fire ritual. Yeah, it was very interesting. I was given something to drink beforehand, which was a sickly sweet, but also bitter white fluid. So I don't know if I was drugged, but this was a full body coloured apparition that came up out of the fire, as opposed to the other things that I'd seen as a child that were more smoky, demonic entities. But yeah, he was that open. He was that open about it that he used that as his Facebook icon. That Facebook page is still up. You can still access it. So these people, they think they're clever, but they're not. They make really obvious mistakes.
It's mind-blowing. And we're going to step back into that some of the rituals that you witness, but I do want to, I'm glad I found this one. This is from Ronna Llewellyn. She says, your story would have a voice on Africa Rising. Chantel has a blog from South Africa. Check her out. Disclosure is needed for this horrendous topic. I just want to say that I love Shanti. I love Chantel Mayberg, who, hello, Shanti, darling. I've been on her channel. She's been on mine. And I know that she's another love of yours, and she's just embraced you on her channel, and she's sat and she's held space for you beautifully while you've been bringing your testimony. And I've done a broadcast before where I said to everyone, get over to Aquarius Rising Africa, get over to Chantel Mayberg's channel, because there's so much more of the people like you with the similar story that on that channel and that are on mine. Mine's a lot more kind of diverse with different subjects, but it's definitely one of her greatest abilities and gathering of research and real people that speak truth, right, on her channel.
Yeah.
What do you think about Shanti?
I think she's a beautiful soul, and I know she's suffered some slings and arrows too, particularly from, you know, certain groups, particularly also Christians, you know, but it doesn't faze her. That's what I love about her the most. It doesn't matter. She laughs it off. She's very, very strong. And, you know, she's a fierce warrior. You know, she's had her channel taken down. She rebuilt it, you know, and it's better than it was before. And she has amazing guests. I'm not obviously talking about myself, but she has incredible people on there. Kathy, obviously. And she does bring on too people that haven't had a voice yet, which is a beautiful thing to see. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. May we take a step back into the revelation you were sharing of the Egyptian ritual parades. I mean, it's hard to keep saying the same word over and over because the way the algorithm maps and tracks, you know, these conversations. Would you be able to share? You mentioned Anubis. Can you remind people what this deity looks like and anything else related to that particular experience, let's call it, and any other Egyptian methods used in any of the other that you're comfortable talking about, please?
All right. So one of the first things I just want to mention, Anubis was a jackal-headed demon, so human body with a jackal's head. Now, this is part, and you see these sorts of depictions in Mesopotamia also, these human-animal hybrids. I believe that there may have actually been physical beings with these attributes at some point, and that would explain this obsession with the Satanists with creating humans as hybrid. Even some of the vaccines we have certain other animal elements in them that ends up, you know, melding with our DNA. We end up with these parts of, or at least the DNA of these poor murdered creatures within our system. It's an attempt at that transhumanist and chimera. They've got a fascination with the chimera, the many different DNAs in the one body. What's actually really interesting about that is these satanic bloodlines, and I'm from the Kennedy bloodline, have a lot of attributes that could also be considered chimera type attributes. So DNA in more than one DNA in the same body, which is a really interesting topic yet again. Central heterochromia, Rh negative blood, those are some of the elements that you'll find in those particular family lines. And something I want to mention that you were speaking of before, and obviously we have a dear friend, Jeanette Archer, who's spoken about the reptilian element that exists here. The Hopi Indians believed and have in their folklore, there were reptilian beings. So we're supposed to be paying attention to Indigenous cultures. Obviously, you know, the Western countries, the Western politicians across the world are saying we need to listen to Indigenous cultures because they want to co-opt it and try and steal the land off them. They're trying to pretend that they're their friend. Well, if we're going to listen to Indigenous cultures, we've got to take into account their stories, long-held beliefs of these sorts of otherworldly elements that exist here. That they considered these physical beings. So, you know, I take my hat off to Jeanette for being so strong and so courageous to even speak about it publicly, because it's, you know, the ridicule that you get for speaking about those sorts of things it's monumental. And yet you've got multiple people and multiple cultures talking about these elements. So getting back to that particular ritual, I was probably around about the age of 5. As usual, I was put into the footwell at the back behind my father's driving seat of my father's car, and a blanket or something was put over me so that I was hidden. I couldn't see where I was going. He did this to me often. We traveled to a certain house. It was dark. It was cold. He raped me in the car and then trotted me in immediately afterwards. I was already in a dissociative state. Trotted me in to this house. We went down to the cellar. There were a lot of people in there. It was very crowded. I was given this white substance. And then there was what I would describe as an unusual looking, what must have been a kind of kiln. It definitely had a clay cladding on the outside, and it was unusually shaped. And there was fire inside that, and that is where the ritual took place. So there were people in robes. I often saw people in robes at these rituals, and they called up this being. And what was really interesting was I wasn't terrified of it, but I think that was because of whatever this was, this white liquid that they gave me. I remember it very vividly because I was witness to many rituals as a child, but this one was full color apparition. And I don't remember seeing anything like that since, nor beforehand. So obviously this was some powerful magic, or whatever that was that they gave me was some powerful drugs. I was used to communicate with this entity, and I was often used in that capacity as a child. So these individuals, these adults, are too cowardly or too incapable of communicating with these beings that they call up. And so they use children to communicate for them. Also, it's a safety net for them, because who does the being focus on? The child. So, and a lot of the times the child is then sacrificed to this entity. So children are naturally psychic. The veil doesn't fully descend on a child until they're roughly about 5 or a little bit older. I believe that the veil is lifting completely now. This is part of the awakening process, so that people aren't not as dumbed down as they were before. I don't know if you have that sort of same belief. It seems to me that that's what's going on. Yeah. So you know, children are used in this way, and this is another reason why children are so intrinsic to what they do. They can't do the work that the children can do, because the children are still so connected in to the earth and to all the elementals and to the spirit world, because they've just come from it.
Yeah. It's interesting that if people are wondering why weren't you like unalived there, well, you were from a very high elite family. You were an elite child. You were a marked child for certain grooming and metaphysical, psychic skills, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So my mother, I believe, was chosen by my father. She had central heterochromia. Central heterochromia is a different, a unique eye color. 1 in 200 people have it, and that's in the Western world, and it's 1% of 1% of the worldwide have this eye color. So there is a ring of color around the pupil that is different to the rest of the iris. There's also full heterochromia. So people with central and full heterochromia in the Hindu religion and many of these esoteric religions have an ability to commune with God and otherworldly entities, to see the future. This is not an elitist thing. Anybody with any eye color can have an ability to commune with those entities. But because the Nazis were experimenting with Romani gypsies with this eye color, there's an understanding in the Satanic world that these children have this capability. And perhaps it's a higher capability than others that don't have that particular eye color. And again, I'm not considering myself any better than anybody else because of this eye color, not at all. It's just when we're talking about these darker elements, they'll go for the easiest route. So my mother was earmarked because she has this eye color. She was highly psychic, and probably still is. And my father bred with her for that reason. What's really interesting is I had 3 older siblings. One has since passed away. It was her birthday yesterday. She was murdered, but my older siblings all had central heterochromia also. Now, I didn't meet their mother. She was murdered also, way before I was even born. But that tells me that my father chose his first wife, Margaret, probably for her central heterochromia, because his 3 older children have it. He doesn't have it. And my mother for hers. And we were all used for psychic programming. We all have abilities in that area. Even those 2 that refused to speak up, who profited from his death.
Can you tell people what eye color you're referring to that don't know?
So central heterochromia, so I have a combination of orange and green. It can be yellow and blue. So it's just simply a ring of color that's different around the pupil to the rest of the iris. So sometimes there's 4 colors, sometimes there's 5. I have 5. The more colors in the iris, it's considered to be more capable of communicating with otherworldly entities. But again, this is not an elitist thing. People with straight blue, straight brown, you know, people in other cultures that don't have this color, eye color, are highly psychic. We've got, you know, there's billions of people on the planet, and many of us are psychic. It's not about that. It's about the fact that these particular individuals think that they can hijack and utilize children with this eye color, because it's as plain as the eyes on our face. They can just look at a child and say, well, that one's going to have it. Let's use that one today.
When you say that you were in an experience where a demonic entity was being used through you, do you remember what that felt like?
I was never actually inhabited by a dark entity. They could never do that to me, but I was used to communicate. So what would happen is, and I'd shut down my clairaudience. So the clairaudience is when, I know you know this, but when you can hear otherworldly entities speaking to you audibly. I shut that down from a very early age because I recognized that if I didn't, they were going to keep using me in that way. And the terror, I think wasn't necessarily a choice. It just shut down because I couldn't deal with the sound. Darkest entities that are conjured into the 3rd dimensional space don't want to be here. They don't want to be used by humans. They don't want anything to do with humans. That was obvious as a child. They screech. It's like listening to fingernails down a chalkboard. It's a horrible sound. It makes every nerve in your body is on end. It hurts to hear, but they would use me to communicate. You know, I saw some pretty freaky stuff. So, you know, there was an occasion where, and I can't quite work out if it was multiple occasions because I keep seeing it from different angles, but there was an occasion, I'll just say it's one, where, and women were often the ones that were doing the conjuring. Almost always, when I watched these rituals take place, it was the women doing it. And they would often wear white. So I've since learnt that the Eastern Star sect, that's the female version of Freemasonry, they often would wear white. One of them did the ritual wrong. And so because it was her responsibility to make sure that everything was in place so that this entity couldn't get out of the circle, or I couldn't see what pentagram or whatever shape that had on the ground at the time. It was very dark. But whatever she did it wrong. And this thing attacked her. Limbs didn't fly or anything like that, but you know, I got the impression that she didn't survive it. So, you know, that's a warning to all people who think that they can play with these things. It's just so stupid.
So stupid. You know, I think it would be important for you, because we've been going nearly 2 hours now, and there's so much information that you've gifted us, and I'm going to go back one step in a moment, but I think that if we come back together again, you and I, and share into the field the witchcraft, the spelling, and some of the ways that we really can be harmed, that would be really interesting and educational for the lovely audience. Now, I want to go back a step here on the Egyptian, the headed, the jackal, the Anubis, the others. You know, I know that there's a part of humanity that trusts that we paint what we see, we draw what we see, and yes, there is. But also I know for an absolute fact, based on the research, based on Elena Danan, who just happens to be my best friend in the world, but also a senior scientist, has her degree in Egyptology, was the one and only for 8 years translator of hieroglyphics at the Temple of Karnak in Luxor. She is at the highest value of somebody that we should listen to, because she's been there, lived it for 8 or 9 years. And she educated me on the fact that, let's say the jackal head, for example, or Mat, M-E-A-T, or Hathor, let's pick Hathor. And the different ways they break down the sound vibration of the name and what it represents. So it's a representation of the house of, and there is a symbol per house. Now, you and I both know that no matter if it's of the good, the dark ones will try and use it for the dark. That's what they do, because they reverse, they create opposites, they inverse everything. So it's not surprising that they've used the ancient Egyptology. But again, we can track back further to Sumer, ancient Sumeria, to Enlil, and that evil, usurping Egypt, putting in and rewriting. And it's just so corrupt. Everything is so corrupt. So again, we owe it to ourselves to listen to interviews like this, conversations that you and I are having, and then think for themselves. And I think, like I said, that I got to stand for Elena Danan, and I will, because I know that she comes from an academic, scholarly research, lived it. And again, so we can bring both elements into the field, that Anubis wasn't just a demon-headed, you know what I mean? There was a beauty, there was a role in that deity and the representation of, again, so we can help people not to turn away from the Egyptian images, thinking they're all demonized, because they're not. They're not. So again, just an opening of thought here. What do you think?
Well, it's interesting because, like I said, I wasn't terrified of that entity, and that was
Yeah, there's a
mm.
wow. Let's do one more little question here, because we're pretty much at the end. This is interesting. Muscle artist. China is buying up thousands of acres in the US for the same reason they are doing so in Australia. What do you think about that? All these land grabs globally.
Again, I think part of that is that they think that they can just take over. And obviously the Chinese people aren't evil people. There'd just be elements there that are uber rich and want to take up large swathes of land all over the world. We're going to reach an equilibrium. So we may have multicultural countries. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because you're not going to have invasions into a country if it's a multicultural country. And it's impossible to be racist when you're surrounded by people who are good people from many different races. But I still feel also that part of that will be thwarted, because I think the way that it's being sold off, it's not being done in a legal fashion. That is my opinion. These are land grabs. So a lot of the original people that actually have the greatest right to that land are not part of the process. And that is not natural. That's against natural law, L-O-R-E. It's against that natural law. So I think much of that will have to be reversed. I don't think it's going to be able to keep in perpetuity. I don't think it will stand.
Yeah. And it's so illegal. It's like William, the bloody conqueror, coming over and putting the crown of England on his head, and then giving all his mates all of the land, and then those that couldn't manage it sold it or leased it, and we're still living with that tomfoolery to this very day. And that was in 1060.
Yeah.
It's just like, enough. We rewrite history, we take our world back, we fairly look after everybody, and we get rid of the Muppets at the top, no one above another. There is so many ways we could go here. I'm glad we got a moment to step back to Anubis and the Egyptian, imagery and iconography, because it's very important that you and I don't sully or super confuse. Not that that's ever our intention, but it is the most sensitive time. And just like earlier, when we were talking about the psychic tools and how important it is to give the warnings, to share the dangers. And so next time we get together, we'll talk about the witchcraft and the rituals and how they can be really harmful. And then we can talk a little bit about Jesus and anything else that comes up, because I know these are some of the most important topics everywhere on earth. What do you think?
Sounds great. I'd love to come back. Thank you.
Beautiful. Seriously, thank you. I made so many notes, that I always do, to try and get the most, take care of you, but, have you, support you in delivering and us sharing information too. You did really amazing. Thank you so much. Let's leave your final thoughts of today with the beautiful audience and give them again your website, how to contact you, that you do see people one-to-one. You do take clients.
I do, yeah. So you can find me at, as I mentioned earlier, www.sixth, as in the number sixth, science, it's a bit of a mouthful.com. I teach a course, how to read, see ley lines, how to find them, and how to read auras, and how to find your soul purpose. It's all interrelated, and psychic protection, energetic protection also, which is extremely important. I also do one-to-one readings. So if people want to find me or contact me, they just go through the website, fill out the form on the website. I'm on Rumble, BitChute, YouTube, Telegram, Twitter, and Facebook. I only have one account on each of those. So most of them are under my name, Rachel Vaughan, but my Twitter account is Weasel, @Weasel8888. That was my nickname as a child, and it fits because I don't stop. Just pushing and pushing.
That's so sweet. Is that like the animal, Weasel, Weasel?
Yeah, and I've kept ferrets for many years, so it's they're my mascot. Yeah.
Oh, that's so lovely, so lovely. As you are, Rachel Vaughan, you're a joy. It's an honor to know you and to sit with you and to share, your experiences into the field, and to also, bear witness to the fact that you've survived so much and that you've kept it together in a way that you can then have the strength to want to share with others who may have gone through the same, worse. Or there was one person that said in the drop down comment section, I've never experienced this, but as I watch Rachel, I'm feeling a healing. I mean, how great is that,
Wow.
right? From something else. There was
Wow,
something else.
that's beautiful.
Yeah, in the body, or goosebumps, in the body being healed. So anyway, again, Rachel Vaughn, thank you, my darling love. We just so honor and respect you, and so grateful that you've come here now for the second time, and that we'll continue our connection and continue sharing with the audience. And to the audience, thank you so much. I know this has been a long broadcast. I'm sure that you've enjoyed it. It is packed full of information, and I like to do that on most of my broadcast, Rachel, always dropping in so many little things for them to grab us, to rethink and go into an area that we might not have, because this has never been the most important time to do that. So to the audience, my name is Danny Henderson. I send you my love, and we'll see you soon.